Okay, good morning and welcome to this talk. I got a sign that, okay, I can start, but I'm not sure yet whether there will be more people joining or other talks have also started, but at least the person has given me a sign to start, and I would like to keep to the time because I understand that there are talks after this as well, so mine will be for about 20 minutes or so. Before I begin the talk, I would like to say something. I'm Swarna. I work at TNO as a cybersecurity researcher advisor. And this talk is a part of a larger research project that we are working on from Intersect. Intersect is an NWO research program where we collaborate with universities and also partners. And we, as an applied research organization, are right in the middle, trying to bring research more to the field, to the partners. Intersect is mainly looking at the security for IoT devices, but then we specifically are working, or this talk is specifically on one particular work package, which is the design work package 2, which focuses on design aspects. So moving forward. The talk, like I said, that it tries to bring together safety and security in system of systems. Some small things to understand a little bit is that systems are getting more complex, as we all know. There are several components coming together. Then we also, of course, rely on third-party suppliers in the components, but also with software, there are several moving parts. And then this contributes to a larger system of systems. So there is complexity. Moving on, we also see that there is a dynamic aspect of systems. That is, they're constantly evolving. New behavior is also coming, and we have to adapt to these new changes. And this also brings several aspects of security into play. Then you have an increased attack surface. Everything is networked. You want to all the time connect to the cloud. You have several exposed surfaces and several attack paths, hence. Another aspect which we also have noticeably seen, which is increasing, is the cyber-physical systems that is bringing IT and OT together. So like when you look at bridges or tunnels, there are several moving parts, but there's also a lot of IT components to it. So that's another aspect. When we look at the current way of design, we see that trying to bring safety and security into these dynamic systems involves a sort of system thinking, and then this can be challenging if we look at the current way systems are designed. Many are designed to last for longer periods of time, while software changes are constantly happening. So these can bring together several aspects. Another aspect is ICT itself is getting complex, and then it's becoming broader while being dependent on several things. We do have certain systems which are designed, but they are always designed to counteract against existing threats or known threats. But then what happens when you foresee something which is not there already? How are you going to protect your system? How are you going to protect the components from it? And then these kind of, sometimes there can also be implementation flaws. So when you look at software, if you have implemented something in a wrong way, it can lead to several exposed vulnerabilities, which can then cause further attack paths. And again, this I'm talking in perspective of IT, but we always have to consider the perspective also of OT systems, where there are several other physical parts connected to these IT systems. And then, of course, there is some other principles like zero trust architecture, which helps in securing systems better. But it's not always very easy to make a whole zero trust architecture for all the system of systems available. And then this can be, again, quite challenging. And finally, we do have several guidelines and regulations which are coming to make sure, some of them being, of course, the CRA Act, the NIS2, all of them do give guidelines, but then it's not to say that it can just be a checkbox exercise that, okay, just because I follow all these rules, that means it's giving me a guarantee that everything is complete. So this is always constantly changing as well, that you have to think of ways that you can improve these aspects of design. some more research what we have looked into is looking at the system of systems and how safety and security can be embedded into this. So when you look at the systems engineering perspective, we try to look at each of the small components. Each component can be part of a subsystem system and larger system of systems. When you take a look at, say, IoT devices, they can be monitoring devices as a component, which can be a part of a larger subsystem, and then bigger system, like for example in a manufacturing plant, you have several monitoring devices checking all kind on the manufacturing floor, but then when you look at the system of systems, it's much larger, and this is a way where small systems can evolve into a larger system of systems. And then this becomes really important that you try to establish ways that you can ensure both safety and security together. So systems engineering, a part of the research that we are doing at TNO, there's also a department where we look at specifically from a systems engineering perspective, where we try to see that this supports the entire life cycle and that the systems landscape can change, but we try to see how can you design this in a way that you try to bring this into a design concept earlier, because it's not possible that you try to add safety and security in the last phase. After you make the full design, everything is done, you cannot just add it towards the end. And also knowledge, of course, it's not that one size fits all. So we also have to ensure that this design part is also including domain experts who understand what actually is being in that specific system. For example, when I said the manufacturing floor is quite different when you look at another thing like an EV charging system. So they are different, although they are system of systems, but you also need to consider that there will be variations when you think of design aspects. Then we also see the need for cyber resilient system design, because a reactive approach can help in certain ways, but with the constant evolving AI and malwares and everything which is evolving at a faster speed, if you want to have a reactive approach, this can be considered as not sufficient, and it can cause further damage for these, which can cause damage in different aspects. One such standards which did come out was the NIST standard on the cyber resilience principles, which they showed that these are some 5 pillars to consider at the NIST guidelines, where they said that you can think of systems that are able to anticipate, prevent, withstand, respond, and recover. So when you think of these principles, they can help in a much better way that you think of not as a reactive approach, but then you try to get it to a more design phase that helps in certain aspects of this. Some of the benefits could be that this can help with also making sure that the operations continue, that you try to minimize the effects even if there is a cyber attack by, for example. We try to see that how it can still minimize the effects or try to contain the problem and then still continue with some minimal operations, but then try to reduce the cost of damages while also making sure that the safety and security is maintained. Then we went one step further and thought, how can we think of these ways and how do we start? Where do we start? We were during our research, we were considering how to bring together this cyber resilience in a system design. One of the most important aspects is to have several experts on the table. When you have the systems engineer, system operator, you have also the safety and security engineer, but also the test engineer, while bringing also important aspects from the business perspective. So you need to consider several aspects when you are bringing this resilience design. Because when you think of only one part, if it's considered only that the systems engineer and systems operator have designed it while not considering any other aspects of safety and security, and you think to add it towards the end, then you see that the system is not capable enough to consider cybersecurity as well as safety from the beginning. Of course, I think in traditional OT systems, safety has much higher priority, like looking at electric grids or substations. They definitely have a very high priority. That is really important considering the physical consequences which it could be. What we are trying to also say is that cybersecurity needs also a higher priority when you consider that there can be possibilities which can cause also physical safety damages using a cyber attack. Like I think we have looked at some attacks in the past, like in the electric grid from Ukraine, where it was a cyber attack caused all the shutdown, and where the malware had problems as well. Like and then there were other instances of, for example, in the US on the electric grid, the Volt Typhoon malware was as well found. Of course, it was more on the sabotage, not on the safety, but still security needs to be considered quite important here. Hence, we came up with this methodology. We've also published a paper on this, where we know that these are the different roles that are needed when you want to think of trying to bring in a system concept into design. So when you're trying to look at requirements, you try to put all of those into the beginning. Again, think of it as a cyclic process and a small incremental process that you try to bring and see both resilience and safety. Do you think that all the threats have been considered? Do you see there are still gaps available? How do you cope for this? Or as a judgment from the several experts, are these measures sufficient, or should I go back to the drawing table to see that more measures need to be added? So until now, what I've described is mostly on the system perspective. Later on, I will also talk a little bit more on the cybersecurity aspect, which we are currently focusing on. So this is something that we have come up with, and during our research in this Intersect project, along with my colleagues, and then we would think that this is a possible way to improve system design. And like I mentioned earlier, this is more of an incremental and iterative process. So it also should be noted that it's not that you make it once and then it's going to be there for the whole lifetime of your system that it exists. You have to go back to the tables as and when you think that the risks have changed, or there are threats which have new threats that are there, or there are more gaps which are possibly there. Hence, this is you need to consider this as a more of an iterative process. And finally, what we notice is that this helps in bringing the safety and the security engineers together and try to think of design process for complex systems. They are system of systems, so they are quite complex, and then this helps in bringing the baseline a bit closer. And like I mentioned, that we have published also a paper on this research work that we have done to see how we can bring safety and security together as a part of the system design, that we want to see bringing that this as early as possible in the process, and try to see that it is embedded in the systems engineering way. So until now, I've talked more on the system design perspective, more on the system aspect, and now currently our research mainly focuses on these aspects, like for example, what kind of security measures can you come up with, what kind of safety measures is possible, or what directions can we move in this, which can help for cybersecurity. Till now, it was more on the system design aspect. I think it's a bit loud. I hope you all can still hear me, or okay, yeah. Why do you think that there is still a need for cyber resilience? Like I already mentioned, there have been more and more attacks from our adversaries using different stealth techniques, use of AI. It constantly requires a lot of resources from the defenders. It always seems that you're one step behind, and you have to spend a lot of resources trying to keep the next attack at bay. So we are always have a reactive approach, and you're constantly in this. And it can also mean that it requires a lot of resources, and sometimes it's not always available. And this has it's a cyber rat race, which can also be quite expensive in that sense. Of course, I'm not saying that we don't have advanced technologies. There are advanced detection capabilities, threat intelligence, automated response, but it still feels that you are responding and you are not able to already anticipate and see how the system can evolve. And from this, this has resulted in some new way of thinking in our research, which is sort of a bio-inspired autonomous cyber resilience. In the human body, you see that cells are some of the cells can be disposable. You react to certain infections or bacteria by making mutations, or you see that whatever damage is done, it's possible that it can quickly repair itself. Of course, it's not that your body always goes back to the exact same position that it was before, but it still knows how to adapt itself and try to come to a more self-regulating position. So this was one aspect that we have been working on since already, I think, about 2018 on other research projects that to try to think of bio-inspired ways on and make the comparison to IT systems. So this is autonomous cyber resilience. Like I said, that you look at disposability, and when you try to design a system, you take into account several extra negative selection and try to see if there are ways to look at how we can think of multi-layered approach and make different possible designs. So this is, I think many of you already may be aware or probably know better than me as well. So this is typically how the multi-layered approach can be in terms of a cloud infrastructure, or how we are trying to do, there could be a central security operations system that trying to, security operations center that is doing forensics, scanning, security events, and then it has a response action. What we are thinking of in our current research is this autonomous cyber resilience, that you think of ways that a small component is able to regenerate or try to restore itself and keep it as a fast response. So what you see is that this can be as a fast response that is decentralized and which can be done at a quicker rate, while you look at the security operations center as more as the brain, but then it has still as a slow response that it takes its time to doing reasoning and a centralized information processing. This was also, if you look at, I think maybe many of you all are aware of the Daniel Kahneman, where he thinks of system 1 and system 2 and how there can be a fast response or a slow response. Until now, we have done this research in cloud infrastructure in Kubernetes, but it could also be that it can be products, subsystems, components, and like I said, it goes back to the initial slide which I showed about how the components are. So we are now trying to look and see whether these research can also be applied to larger and different, more diverse systems. That's it. Of course, it's not that it's really easy and we're able to immediately apply these aspects. There are still many challenges to autonomous cyber resilience, because in cyber resilience, we still are lacking specific terminology and how these interfaces can react to, can respond to each other. In systems engineering, it's pretty clear, it has been pretty clear over the years. They have done research on how different components can respond to each other, can react to each other. But when you look at cyber resilience, how can you ensure that if component Y is secure, does that also mean, even though it's connected here, some other parts can be still secure? Or if you secure one part, does it mean it also includes the further bigger system? So these are still some challenges which we do see. But one of a very important part that we have come from our research is there should be a sort of a paradigm shift, that you need to think of cybersecurity as a functional requirement than as a non-functional, that you try to add it towards the end and see that probably one size fits all, that doesn't seem to work, at least from what we have seen in our research. And like I said, coming back to this, if you look at who would be the owner, you need to also think of these, what kind of users are there. I started out my talk saying Intersect was about IoT devices, for example. I wouldn't say like, for same security measures for a IoT Ring doorbell would be the same as, for example, a hospital management system or an imaging device. It wouldn't be as same, or it cannot be immediately translated. But what is important to note is that we need to think of cyber resilience measures and see how these can be adapted or changed to incorporate for different systems. One of the software which we have open sourced is called self-healing for cybersecurity. This was this research has started in 2018, I think, where we came up with sort of a Kubernetes Docker-based system where you could see that these components or the pods could self-heal itself in the sense that regenerate when there are threats. Where the threat level increases due to different monitoring, there it can regenerate itself in the sense that it can reduce down the threat when there are, even though there are no attacks, but then it's still continuously regenerating, thinking that how it is done at rest. But on the other case, where we tested it for in case there's a brute force or a brute force login with several logins that you can collect from the logs, there you see automatically that the threat level is increasing. Then you see that there is a possibility to restart these Docker containers by itself because it's a more rule-based approach, and we try to continue this and see how the threat level can be shared between the apps as well and help with making these steps further to incorporating autonomous cyber resilience. Of course, the software is open source. It's possible to find it on this website here. Moving further, like I mentioned right in the beginning, this was Intersect is about IoT devices, where you are able to cluster them. We see how the complexity can increase quite drastically. When you look at cloud native, like fitness trackers or mobile networks or the Ring doorbells or monitoring devices, doesn't have the same as, for example, self-driving cars or substation. This increases in complexity. So how do you think of, how can you think of applying these principles, or what changes needs to be done? So this is something that we are working towards. Yeah, I think that comes to almost the end of my talk. Until now, I did mention that we are working on an Intersect project, which is the work package on design. Parallelly, we also have an early research program at TNO, which is a 4-year program. It's an internal TNO program. I will talk a little bit more on the next slide about it. But of course, we are also having collaborative projects with the industry. In Intersect itself, we have several partners who are mostly from the region of Eindhoven who are collaborating with us in this research work as well. So, but we also think of projects with the industry. And this, another aspect, like I said, the early research program, and this is one where also our design methodology is coming into the cyber resilient system design. We are working on different aspects which can help in this moving towards a cyber resilient system. How can you have a new perspective, whether it being at the system level or at the design incorporation? But one very important factor, also a critical factor, is the stakeholder involvement, like you look at the human-centric system design. And that brings me to my last slide. Yeah, so like I mentioned, we are looking at the cyber resilient, the methodology, what we have described in the beginning. This is should be a collaboration between specialists, system engineers, test engineers, but also cybersecurity. And each step of the way, they have to be on together on this. These SE principles can fortify cyber resilience and help with making a sort of a blueprint for complex systems. We also have another Intersect event, a roundtable upcoming next year, where we want to discuss further on our methodology and also have some discussions with partners who would think that that could be useful. So, yeah, that was my last slide. Thank you for your time and attention. If you have questions or comments, or would like to reach out, please feel free. Okay, thank you.